Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Lexington City Council and the Lexington City School Board. It is the appointed hour of 6 o'clock, and I would like to call the rowdy Lexington City Council to order and invite Chairman Diaz. The mellow Lexington. Awesome. Like, wow. We are in session, and thank you, school board. It is wonderful to be with you and to get an update of the school year and all the things going on with the school. I don't know if there are any introductions necessarily to make. Nick Betts is our newest council member, who I'm sure you all voted for and helped get into the seat that he's in. And I would say, as far as presentation, ideally wind up about 6:50. So we have about 10 minutes before the 7 o'clock council meeting for anyone who had wine at the or beer at the business after hours earlier, needs a break. And I hope that we can have time for questions and some robust discussion. But with that, I'll invite Rebecca to come up and get us started. Yes, please. Yeah, these are being recorded for folks that can't be with us. So be loud and be proud so everyone can hear you. And while you're gearing up, Janie informed me that the room upstairs that we use frequently and I prefer to use when we have work sessions so we can all sit around the table together was unavailable tonight. So we will work diligently to be at the Kumbaya table in the future. So Rebecca, go right ahead.
Thank you all so much. We always look forward to having an opportunity to get together and talk with you all about our schools, the great things that are going on in the schools, and how we are planning to move forward into a new school year. Thank you all, as always, for your continuous support of the schools and the programs that we provide for the students of Lexington City and the staff and the families that we serve as well. So this evening, I'm going to give a brief overview of looking towards our budget for next school year. That's usually the focus of our April time together. I did send you a copy of this presentation earlier today. So if you got an opportunity to review it, and I'm going to look for some head nods, I'm just going to hit a few highlights so that you do have plenty of time to stop or ask questions towards the end of the information. So the first is just an overview of our enrollment for the schools. I'm not going to break it down by individual schools, but we are currently serving 649 students between Waddell, Lilburn, and our students at Rockbridge County High School. 8 additional students to that total number are alternatively placed in some of the regional private day schools around the area. So these would be anywhere from actually preschool to high school age students who are not served in one of our public school settings, but in one of our private schools. It could be Rivermont Rockbridge. It may be VIA, which is the autism program in Roanoke, or here in Lexington. Our projected enrollment, simply from a roll-up standpoint, we actually have already enrolled, I think, almost 48 kindergartners, which is a large number for us to have a spring number that high. We anticipate probably a few more moving into the area this summer. But just for roll-up purposes, we're looking at a K-12 population of 639 students. Again, that is just simply moving each current grade up a level and exiting the 12th graders and entering in the new kindergartners. We did base our FY24 approved budget on an ADM of 630. As I traditionally share with you all, I budget a little bit lower because we don't know that those numbers are all going to come fall and stay with us for the full year. And we want to make sure that we're a little conservative on the end with the numbers. Staffing numbers are pretty much where we were last year.
Does our school board approve any students into virtual Virginia so that they count into our ADM?
We do not.
Okay, but we could if there were any city students that come to the school board for approval, then we would get to count them in our ADM.
I believe so.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
we haven't had any students that have participated in that program to date. In terms of budget priorities, I'm not going to go into huge detail, but our school board has been incredibly supportive to promote and prioritize salary increases for all of our employees so that we can keep up with the neighboring schools. I don't know if you read the paper frequently, but see that school systems such as Lynchburg, Nelson are starting their teacher salaries closer to $50,000 for starting teacher salaries to try to promote bringing new teachers into the area. We're trying to keep up, of course, very comfortably with Rockbridge, with Buena Vista, with some of the other neighboring school systems so that we can continue to bring in strong applicants. We did propose and approve in our budget an overall 7% increase for our employees next year. We have an associated cost there as well. As you may remember, last year, the biennium requirement over last year and this year was at least a 10% raise. The state is still going back and forth with their budgeting to figure out whether they're going to push for a 7% raise for everyone or a 5%. Our board pushed for a 7%, and that's what we've included in our numbers.
And Rebecca, so that is not contingent on the state budget.
It is not. We've included these numbers in our figures, and we're hoping to be able to do that. We did modify a few salary scales as we did last year. We again have gone back and revised our paraprofessional salary scales to continue to make these salaries a little more appropriate for the work that those folks do in our schools. And we're continuing to promote that opportunity. And I think we'll continue to do that year to year. We will again increase our salary scale for food service workers effective July, which to our board's request, they would like to at least be 10% above minimum wage for those folks. So we've been able to do that. We'll see another increase for them in the near future as minimum wage continues to go towards $15.
These are 9-month contracts
For food service,
for food service and paraprofessionals.
paraprofessionals are paid the full they're 10-month employees, but their pay is paid out through the year. So they do get a paycheck during the summer as well.
And how many hours a day is that calculated? 7.5 or
Yes,
8?
7.5. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. As I spoke to you in the fall, we did decide to go ahead and add a few new positions that we have been talking about for a while. We do have the need for an additional paraprofessional at Waddell Elementary School. We continue to enroll students who have some significant educational needs, some significant behavioral needs or social emotional support. So it's really important for us to have the folks in place to support their needs through the day. We also are very excited to finally be able to put into place a full-time office aide for Waddell Elementary School. That's been wanted and needed for quite some time, to have a second person in the main office to support our secretaries, our secretary in that building, so that she can continue with her basic duties as well as all the bookkeeping and other duties that she has. This will be a second person in that office. That is a 10-month position. So it'll be very similar to a paraprofessional's position, but their assignment will be in the office. One thing I did want to speak a little bit more detail about is our English language learner population. We have seen a great increase in our English language learners this year in Lexington City. And that has impacted our ability to really effectively serve those students with the amount of service time that they are supposed to receive, as well as the amount of support that those families need from our English language teacher. Earlier, when we were approving our budget in February, we were looking at our numbers having increased. In August, we started with 21 students who were English language learners, and by January, we had 31. That's a huge increase on a caseload for an English language teacher, and most of those families are coming in as non-English speaking families. So at the recommendation of our principals and our English language teacher, we did budget a part-time hourly position to help support those English language learners and their families. We're on hold for that a little bit. It is in our budget. But as we're wrapping up the school year, what we're finding is some of those families are now planning to move out of Lexington at the end of the school year. Makes it a little hard to plan in terms of being able to serve them. And then, of course, we don't know how many more families will be coming in. We're sometimes getting pretty quick notice that a family is moving into the area tomorrow. And so we need to plan for their services. But we have held some funds allocated for the purpose of hiring an hourly teacher to support those English language learners and their families.
Do you expect that if you need to move forward on hiring that position, that you would have any challenges finding person to do that?
I do think it'll be challenging. We have had one person express an interest in a part-time position. And so I'm hoping to at least kind of keep them in the loop to say, please keep us in mind as we're able to figure out if that is going to be a position that we go ahead and hire, or if we're going to wait and see what our numbers look like to start the school year and then be able to know those funds are there if we need to hire for some hourly services. And we could modify that, based on the needs. We may not have to do a 15-hour position, but may be able to pay someone on a timesheet per se to be able to do those services.
Is the ratio that you're going for, is it similar to our neighboring school districts?
I don't believe it is to Buena Vista. I don't think they have many families at all. I know Rockbridge has, I'm not sure that they have a huge population as well. We just saw a large influx this year with families moving into the area that needed those services.
Do we have one full-time teacher?
One.
Right.
Yes. And she was actually part-time about 5 years ago, and we increased that position to a full-time position then. She is required by the ELL programming to do certain time, instruction time for students based on their level of language abilities. So for a student that may not have a lot of English language, they're going to have more service time versus a student who's on a monitor basis because they've gained language, but they continue to need those services. And then again, what I mentioned is she does support us with things like translation and interpretation and meeting with families and helping families access services because of the language barriers.
And is that a SOQ position?
It is, and we do receive state funding. We did get a small projected increase based on those numbers. And then of course, it'll fluctuate based on what we end up with at the end of the year and when those numbers finally come in.
Okay. And the other two positions, those are not SOQ.
They are,
Those
right. I mean, they're non-SOQ
yeah, right,
positions.
okay.
Yes, no.
How would this, the ELL teacher position, be structured? Would they come in a few days or a few hours each day, or would they come in a couple times a week? Or?
So we would work with our current ELL teacher to look at where the service needs are. So for instance, we may decide that this person serves our smaller population, which could be at the middle school. We only have a few students at the middle school, so this person might serve those middle school times. We would want to work with that person to figure out what's going to work best for their schedule. Sometimes people say, I'm happy with coming in a couple mornings a week. Some people say, I'd like to only do a couple hours. We'll make it work within their schedule and ours as well.
Are you finding that most of those non-English speaking students are speaking just one particular language or multiple
Languages?
situations?
Yes, we have, the majority of our students speak Spanish, but we moved in quite a few families from Ukraine this year, and that's a completely different language, alphabet, written language, and everything. So that's been, we've relied a lot on technology this year in terms of phones with interpreting devices and iPads that allow us to have some, interpreting features and things like that. So thank you. Okay, thank you. Quick focus on continuing to increase the division's contribution to our family health insurance premiums. You all were very supportive of that initiative that we started last year. So in our second year of trying to support that, we are realizing a 10% increase in the rates across the board. And so we are attempting to build in at least a 10% increase. We're going to cover that cost and then make sure we continue to add to what we can contribute to those monthly fees. We're talking mainly about employees who have a family plan, which is much more expensive, or a employee plus one plan. Our individual employee plans are pretty solid. Just a few lines that do reflect higher costs to the division. We have definitely noticed an increase in the cost for instructional materials and supplies. As you all know, when you go to the grocery store and pay your utility bills, everything is more expensive these days. So we have budgeted some additional funds for our instructional materials supplies, also for our field trips budget line. And we also are really bringing in some fantastic professional development opportunities for our teachers, and those come at a cost. And so we are making sure that we have the funds there to be able to support the professional development needs to support the instructional emphasis in our buildings. Rockbridge County High School Capital Improvements Plan does not include any identified projects for FY24. What I'll show you on the next page, this has not been updated since last October, and we haven't because we know those numbers are constantly changing. So we will update those again once we get some additional funds. But as you can see, they have FY23 projects And then there's a year with no projects. Then there's FY 25 and a year with no projects. So looking at that FY 24, we're not looking at any additional projects. But as you all know, the Floyd SK building, which is Rockbridge Innovation Center now, that estimate has come in quite a bit higher. I have that highlighted on an additional slide coming up. In terms of budget considerations, our FY 23 budget included that one-time school construction funding line that we received from the state that was just over 1.1 million. Lexington City Schools did allocate that full amount to support Lexington's shared cost of the capital improvement projects for FY 23 at the high school. We have been working closely with Jennifer at the city and the Rockbridge County folks as those funds have come in to determine the billing and payment plan to be able to support that project. The additional piece that we are looking at is we do receive an annual invoice for the HVAC performance contract at the high school. And we have decided we need to include that as a separate budget line in our budget. Aaron and I were actually unaware that that piece was traditionally built into our tuition budget for the high school. So when that invoice came, we did not have that included in our FY 23 piece. We've paid that, it's taken care of, but we're going to have to do a little different planning and isolating that bill on its own so that we know when it comes, it is its own bill. Doesn't really involve the tuition piece, but it's been built in that way. So for the HVAC system.
Is that in line with the presentations that we had years ago about how wonderful that plan would be for the high school, the HVAC performance plan?
And then it would pay for itself.
Exactly. Changing light bulbs and so on would pay for itself.
I think that was might be before my time in terms of that conversation.
have
So I'm not
been.
sure I can answer it adequately, but I'm glad to get some more information if you'd like. I'm sorry.
Well, and is that the same HVAC performance or is this
This is
more?
the performance plan, the HVAC performance plan at the high school where we have an annual fee and it goes up a little bit each year and we have a contribution towards that.
When that plan was put into place,
Mhm.
and you're right, it was probably
Right.
before you became superintendent. We asked the question at that time because the performance plan was based on the current layout of the building.
Yes.
And again, it was kind of said it will pay for itself. And we said at that time, hey, when you start doing renovations to the Floyd SK Center, your performance plan says it'll pay for itself in 20 years, let's say. But when you tear apart a high percentage of the complex
Mhm.
within 5 years, what happens to the final 15 years of that performance contract? And as I recall, the response wasn't that great. It was kind of like, we'll figure that out when it happens. So I guess that's just a way to
We can research.
follow up
that,
on
and we
that. I
can
mean,
research
just to
and
make sure,
follow up on
because I
that.
mean, what they
Sure.
said might
Change.
change.
Yes.
But I appreciate you mentioning that it used to be in our tuition bill because I
Yes.
don't remember that.
Right.
We got a separate bill
Well,
for that.
we didn't either. As Erin and I started working on budget together in her new role, that was not a piece that we were aware of. That was built in earlier. So we're going to bring it out just so we say, this is the HVAC piece and we know that we have that piece built in. So, but
And
thank you. I will follow up on that.
is that annual expense for the financing of the HVAC? Or is it just the operation? Do you recall? I mean, if I would say if you can just,
Yes.
we won't get into the weeds on this, but it's the old trust but verify.
Yes.
Folks that came in and sold us a system, as David pointed out, this will pay for itself. It'll be great. You'll love it. I'd just love to get some
Be
assurance that,
glad to do that.
yes, it's worked out, or
Okay. I can do that, but we can definitely look into that and get you some more information.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Sorry, I don't have that in front
No.
of me. So,
Essentially, it promised that they would reduce electricity by 35% and water usage by 42%. And it guaranteed energy savings of $242,000 annually for their county school system, I believe.
Mhm.
I'll forward you
Please.
what their document said would
That'd be helpful.
happen.
what year was that?
2017.
Time
Thank you.
flies when you're having fun.
Right? Thank you. I would be glad to follow up on
6
that.
years ago.
The next slide just mentions the estimate for the Floyd SK, the Rockbridge Innovation Center. You know, the original estimate was at 8 million. You all have seen what happened over the last couple of years in terms of increases in building and increases in cost to projects. That most recent one, I sent you the information on that earlier, that's coming in at about 12 million. We're still waiting to see kind of where that's going to go. They are going to push the start out a couple of months to be able to get hopefully some great bids for that project. And so that project end date, instead of being prepared for the start of the year, I think they're hoping to enter in December or January of that school year. Few projects for our schools. We have already put into place plans, and some of this is already underway. Interior painting continuing at Waddell Elementary this summer. Some additional two-way radios for staff. We are replacing a sound system, 20-plus-year-old sound system in the gym at Waddell Elementary School. We are rekeying the school to a one-key system at Waddell this summer. We've had to replace a milk cooler in the cafeteria at Lilburn Downing, and we are replacing security camera system, which has kind of been patched together over the years with old equipment and new equipment, but we're coming in and doing a full replacement of the security camera system at the middle school. These were funds that we already have requested and received allocation for from our reserve funds for the school system. However, we anticipate being able to cover the cost of those projects with our current budget funds, so we're not going to need to use some of those allocated funds from our reserves. Few budget details. As you all are well aware, we are on hold like everyone else until the state budget negotiations present a final state budget. We did build our initial FY24 budget on the governor's budget that was proposed in December. So we feel like that was a pretty conservative build of our budget. The most recent approved skinny budget. One of the pieces it does not include was a proposed retention bonus for employees. So while our current budget does have that original bonus funding in there, if we need to modify our budget as a result of whatever happens in Richmond, we will come back and consider that. We are looking at a decreased budget line for substitutes because we did not need as many, we don't project as many long-term sub needs next year. We are including any reimbursements and expenses under the ESSER funding for this year's budget. That does end in September of 2024. So I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then we do have two added expenses. One is $23,233 for services of finance from the city to the schools. We're really grateful that the folks in the finance office at the city continue to do our print our paychecks and run a lot of our paperwork. And so there was an agreement between the finance offices to be able to compensate the city for the work that they do for us at the schools. We also decided rather than, we've been working with Public Works, trying to figure out the best way to budget for maintenance needs for the schools. It's kind of hard to do that. It's typically been done based on a timesheet, and in working with Public Works, we determined that paying a $15,000 flat fee would be able to cover the things that we need with the schools, and they were very satisfied with having a flat fee rather than trying to keep up with every time they come for 15 minutes or an hour to take care of something in the buildings. So those are two changes of
Are
lines.
both of those brand new? I mean, for a while, like for the finance kind of shared cost, was that not in the budget for a few years?
It was a shared cost, and then we assumed the full cost of the
Right.
finance officer that we have now with Aaron as our business manager. But yet they continue to do some of the paperwork pieces of our finance. And so that piece was a negotiated piece with them. The Public Works, we do pay Public Works. It's just instead of doing it by an hourly basis, so we don't really know how to plan for that, they agreed to work with us just with a quarterly, a flat fee so that we can have that during the year. So that will look like a new number, but we've been paying Public
But
Works.
the 23,000 though is sort of new. Was there a year without it essentially when Aaron started with Lexington City Schools and kind of truly
Yes, I believe so.
separated, for lack of a better term? Okay, so there. Thank you. Appreciate it, just for the explanation.
It's a good partnership. We're really grateful to have the support from them for small city and small school board as well.
Can I ask one more question about the bonus?
Mhm.
And so the bonus would not occur if it was
So
not in the finally.
We don't
signed-
know that yet. It's currently in our
Okay.
budget. And so once we know which budget is going to come, whether, because right now, the budget that we built it off included a 1% retention bonus, and our board decided to put that in as a one-time bonus for all employees that would be in the fall. Yes, for everyone.
100%. Right.
Yes. And so I guess once we get the final requirements, we'll come back to the board and say, do we need to modify that based on the funds that we have or don't have?
Okay.
So the next slide just represents the total budget is $8,864,214. This is an 8% overall decrease of just over 770,000 from last year. The FY24 budget is built on 630 students, and just looking at our current and our newly enrolled non-residents, we have about 141 non-resident students that are as part of those numbers. We are set to receive $4,540,931 from the state for FY24. This does represent a decrease of just over $1 million compared to FY23, with the majority of that attributed to that one-time school construction bonus or fund that was allocated for us in FY23. This results in a local contribution ask of $3,489,707. And that is a requested increase from last year's budget of just over 28,000 for the schools. A little bit more information just about the Virginia General Assembly and the budget that has been passed in February. This again does not include all of the revenues that were based on the governor's budget in December or on the Senate's or the House's proposed amendments. If no budget amendments are approved, we may need to go back to our budget and make some changes.
If the final budget doesn't include what the House and Senate are doing with the 7% raises, but you already have that in your budget. But if they take a more, if they take the revenue forecasts that the state has been rolling out and making public that are more aggressive than the revenue forecasts that the original biennium budget was built on, would you still need the 28 additional $1,000 from us, or would the state's revenue projections for like sales tax kind of come in and fill the void of that additional $28,000 ask? You see what I'm saying?
I would like to hope it will help with that. We're hoping that the budget we built was, like I said, more on the conservative side, and that if something comes in better, which I keep hearing things are going to be a little bit better with that, I hope we would be able to cover that. We are having to look at a few things on the next slide. I mentioned our utilities, for instance. That is really hard to predict. Our utilities have continued to climb, as you all probably have seen as well. We're already over budget for that for the year. We know we're going to have to go back to our FY24 budget and build in some additional funds for that. We've tried to reach out to the utilities folks and say, help us understand what to budget for and how to budget for this. And we're not getting a whole lot of answers from those folks, but we do know we're going to have to look at increasing our budget for utilities by modifying something within the budget. We are, and I'll pause, David, or Mr. Sigler, and answer that question. I think we'll just have to see what happens when those funds come in. Aaron's been calculating and punching numbers a lot, and every day, pretty much, we're reading articles and checking in and trying to see what's new out there. As soon as we have some more of those numbers, we're going to certainly pass that along your way and bring that to our board for their consideration as well. We're going to try to do that.
Move forward with your new positions, even though this budget they say won't be done until June 20th or June 21st. They essentially just say because of politics. But will you be advertising to fill positions effective 1 July or 1 August, whenever those contracts would start?
So we, Aaron and I just talked about this today as well. So, last year we were in a little bit of a similar time constraint. We went ahead at the end of the year and distributed contracts to our current employees and to the new hired employees for the replacement positions with a letter letting them know that if something changed within the budget, that their salary may change. So that's included as part of our letters. We do really only have the 2 support positions, the paraprofessional position and the office staff position. We have listed those already as anticipated openings, so we are accepting applications for those. We're probably going to go ahead and interview for those and kind of wait it out a little bit and see. Our hope is that we would at least be able to hire the paraprofessional without too much hesitation, and that we may wait and try to do the office aide in the summer when we have more information. I will say we've had really, really good luck with our teacher hires already. We have already hired 4 teachers and a school counselor. We jumped on folks pretty quickly when we posted those positions back in February or so, and we knew that those folks were not coming back. We got some great applicants and we hired them because we knew we needed to jump on those when we can. I think currently we have 1 teacher opening that just became open on Tuesday. And so we're starting to talk to a few folks about that position. And then we have a couple of paraprofessional positions that we're starting to interview for.
On the utilities, do you still have a performance agreement with, I can't remember, if it's Honeywell or whoever
We
it
do.
was?
We're up for a
schools?
renewal of that contract this year. So we're just starting to talk with them about the next pieces for that.
When you talk about utilities, is it electric and gas and water? I mean, if it's water, that's local and maybe there's some issues,
We could talk to those people.
mainly electric. Okay. And no progress with Dominion.
Not that we've had luck with yet. Aaron's pretty good about getting on the phone and trying to bend an ear, but we haven't had a whole lot yet. So
Somebody needs to call Dee Dee Henney.
Yeah.
I have his number. So I could probably do that one. So looking a little bit further ahead, we are looking to budget next. So for FY25, another increase to our substitute daily rate. That is going to be based on, of course, those minimum wage requirements and continuing to keep up with the rates around us. Again, food service salary scales will be modified again for FY25 based on the increase for minimum wage. Rockbridge County's capital projects moving forward, they're still projecting that construction of an auxiliary gym and the replacement of gymnasium bleachers. We have a number there. We know that number is not going to be what the number is. So we just have that in there as a placeholder and let you all know that we know that those are probably going to increase. I already mentioned that ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 grant funds will both be expended by September 2024. That is going to impact our budget a bit, not as much as many other districts. I sit in a lot of meetings with folks who hired a whole lot of people when they got those ESSER funds, and now they're trying to figure out how to keep those positions or how to build into those positions. And we were recommended not to do that when we got those funds, and we really worked hard not to do a lot of that. We did at the time hire a reading specialist. At the time, we had 1.5 reading specialists, so we hired an additional one. And when our halftime person retired, we did not replace that position. So we have 2 full-time reading specialists, and we also finally hired our part-time custodian for Waddell, which has worked out really nicely to have 2.5 custodians in that building. But those will be a budget change because we've been paying for those through the ESSER funds. Summer school and summer curriculum planning, which used to be in our general budget, our local budget. We've been able to pay for that with grant funding for the ESSER program over the last couple of years. That will have to come back into our budget to continue summer school programming and curriculum planning. And then just a small number we did add with ESSER funds, some summer work days for our ITRT, our instructional technology resource teacher, so that she can help to prepare all of the much technology equipment that we have as a result of going virtual a couple years ago. So we're hoping to be able to keep her on for some summer days as well.
That's Miss Hall.
That is Ms. Hall. Yes. Yes. She's a 10-month position. It's a teacher-based position, but we like to have her do another 10 days in the summer so that she can support with all of that technology preparation and training for our teachers when they come back in August.
But she's not in the classroom any longer.
She does a little classroom. She's quite the jack of all trades, as you might imagine. She is our instructional technology resource teacher. So she works with our teachers on implementing technology in their classrooms. She does teach 2 electives at the middle school. So she does a period of electives during the year. She teaches a coding class and a computer applications class. So she does still interact with our middle schoolers. She's also our division director of testing. So she does a lot of work with SOLs and growth assessments and setting our teachers and students up for assessments during the year.
Rebecca, I'll just make a comment. Hearing about the ESSER positions, I mean, that would give me pause if the state doesn't fund the 7% raise of sticking with that. And then next year also having add those additional positions. I'll just throw that out.
Sure.
It's a comment.
And I'll say I'm glad, I was disappointed when Miss Hall became administrative and other, because she's such a terrific teacher. So I'm
Is.
glad to hear she's keeping her toes in the classroom as well as the additional support.
I think she's really happy. It was kind of a win-loss for both of us, but I think she is dynamic at what she does, and she seems to get a lot of reward out of the work that she does in those roles as well.
Terrific. Very good. Other questions? Go ahead.
Well,
Dave.
just when we are forecasting like funds going away and costs, it keeps being talked about, I think, by city staff and a little bit to a degree, this council is implementing a stormwater fee on impervious surfaces. And so that would be something that when this was first talked about years ago by a previous council, it was talked about, and we actually spent $75,000 assessing every single property in the city of Lexington at that time. And it was something that would be charged to city buildings we talked about. It would be charged obviously to every individual. And so I just mentioned that. So if city staff is going to be recommending that to this council, that you're just, that's on your horizon, you know, on your radar, please, for the next year, what that number could look like, because it's something that families will have to absorb, but obviously big buildings and parking lots could be expensive. So I just warn you of that. It's got to be to be determined, but we're trying to signal to every one of our partners that it's being talked about so that no one's caught off guard if it is implemented at some point.
Thank you.
And it might be required by law. There's been what we've always been told. We might be required to have to assess a stormwater fee, to handle stormwater fee. That's how it was sold to us 5 years ago when we started going down this path. So
Something else to work into the budget.
potentially,
Rebecca, on the very first slide, you indicated that current staffing wasn't changing, but then you talked about some new positions. And so pardon me, walk me through that. Are there, I tallied here 85 positions. So that's including crossing guards, which God bless the crossing guards and the good work that they do.
I can get back with you with some numbers. We need to look at how we're finishing out the year. And like I said, if we're adding any of those positions in,
Okay.
and I can certainly bring you back some projected figures for employees.
Great. Yeah, because looking at the ELL and paraprofessional, and on one of the slides, it indicated that the state, it was going to be an increase of $289,800. And the general expense for the 7%, I think I saw somewhere, was going to be the approximate cost was $211,390. And so it got kind of excited. It seemed like there's 70,000 extra from that standpoint. Am I looking at that correctly? Come on up, so in case anybody's listening can.
The $289,000 compensation supplement from the state goes towards our entire standards of quality wages line. So that amount has increased. I believe the increase from last year ends up being about 162,000, if I'm remembering correctly. But that is the total that the state is putting towards our total wages under the standards of quality.
Okay. And the 7% increase that's proposed is for crossing guards to superintendent. It's the whole kit and caboodle, all 85 on this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as far as the paraprofessional population, as far as, can you give me some idea of how many students there are in need, how many providers there are? If you can't, that's okay. But I'm just curious, how that matches out, and the paraprofessionals, because you're looking to add one paraprofessional?
So at the middle school, we have 2 special education teachers and 2 special education paraprofessionals. So those 4 individuals support in any and all classrooms where there are students who require instructional support services in those settings. At the elementary school, we have 3 special education teachers to serve our population. And then we have, I believe, 6. So I'm trying to decide, we had 1 leave in the middle of the year, so we have a sub. I believe we have 6 paraprofessionals at the elementary school. What we're finding is some of the students that we have in our building need a person with them all day. And that pulls from any of the other support services that students need in their classrooms for reading support or for math support. We have some folks who, we have some students with some physical disabilities. So they need to have someone that's with them to support them with mobility or support them with toileting, support them with feeding, things like that. We have some other students who need a person to be close by to reinforce good behaviors and to redirect them. So when we're looking at those numbers, our folks are stretched extremely thin. The other piece that's hitting us a little bit is the pre-K population of some of our students with special needs, and they're all over the place because we have a student who just registered that starts school next week in a preschool in the county. And we are still going to have to provide some special education services, which means I have to send either a teacher and or a para out during the school day to go and provide support services for them
At the preschool.
at the preschool.
Right. Because we're responsible from birth
Yes.
to 22.
So we have some other preschoolers who we have some folks at some of the other preschools in the area. So we're sending a teacher out into those preschools to provide those services, or we may have to send a paraprofessional out to provide some of those services based on the needs within the building. We've increased quite a bit of some of our heavier needs children over the last couple of years, and that's what's requiring that additional paraprofessional. So that helps.
Thank you for sharing that. It's obviously critical and to provide and meet each child where they are. And those are special people in special
Very much.
positions and special students, to be sure. Let me see here. The total increase in cost to the city with your proposed budget is 28,124.
Yes.
Okay. And the substitute teachers, it seems like that number keeps amping up because other municipalities increased it by $10 and it just
They do.
a bidding war.
Our current pay rate for a daily substitute is $100. I've had some people that have come in and said I want a sub for that. Anyway, it's $100 a day. I believe our long-term sub rate is about 120 a day. That really needs to be quite a bit higher because those are people that are coming in and replacing a teacher, and they're doing the lesson planning and they're doing the parent communication and they're doing the meetings. So we definitely need to be able to increase that to make that a little more appealing. I will say, I think when I started here, the substitute pay rate was something about $65 a day when I started, and the long-term pay maybe was 80. So we've just chipped away at it. And that's why you see, if we can get it up another $10 this year, we'll do that. If we can get it up another $20, we will do that. I feel we do need to do that. I'll just give you Waynesboro City. I know they're a little different, but I like to look at them sometimes to see what they're doing. I think their daily rate is about 100, maybe 110, but their long-term rate is $200 a day. So you have to keep those things into consideration, and we want to make sure we have really had some good luck adding some additional subs this year. We've actually employed quite a few more substitute teachers, particularly our university students who are coming out and applying to be a sub, even if they can only sub a couple of days a week. And that's been really, really helpful. But we struggle mightily to find long-term subs. Because it doesn't pay a whole lot and it's a lot of work.
Do
So-
long-term subs do grading as well? Do they do the grading?
Yes, they would work with their teacher somewhat on that. They would still possibly work with a teacher on that, but they would. So if a teacher comes in and they're taking the place of a teacher out on maternity leave or out on medical leave, they're doing the grading, they're
That's
doing
some
the
additional
planning.
work, to be sure.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And it's not a whole lot of pay. And that pay they start at $100 daily rate until they're there 20 days, and then it goes to the 120. So, that's pretty common in most districts as well, but we would like to get that up a little bit higher as well, because we do have some great subs. And we have folks that are coming in at the drop of a hat and don't mind switching position. One that came in yesterday and she said, well, I was supposed to be in first grade and they caught me in the parking lot and said, I'm now third grade. And they do it, and they're wonderful people. And we want to be able to compensate them and keep them in our schools because they're essential.
Angels that cross our paths every day. We just have to open our eyes and see them.
Yes.
Two things. One, an idea, and the other, a request. Looking at healthcare, it seems to always be ratcheting up. And one of the things that I had talked at one point with the city manager about, and looking at our city, and I would suggest perhaps looking at city schools as well. Once upon a time, that was one of the big benefits for working in a municipality, because it was paid for, and things have changed. I mean, we still have VRS, but perhaps our finance departments on a slow rainy day being able to look at what can we do to increase somewhat across the board support for healthcare. I know it's egregiously expensive, but it's one of those benefits of working for our municipality. And the task that I would give you is I've always like to look at compensation, not salary. So when you look at VRS, you look at healthcare bumps because of credentialing, like having a master's. When you look at a teaching position, how much is someone actually making? Because we talk about, oh, their starting salary at 50,000. Well, everybody's paying VRS, but what about the healthcare? What about any other pieces? Of course, it's invaluable to be able to live and work in Lexington, and not everybody can do that. But being able to work with our new employees to understand all the benefits they're getting, not just the paycheck or the $13.50 an hour or whatever it may be.
And we do provide them with a salary statement that does include that information. I don't think we include the health insurance piece, but we do include the VRS contributions, their FICA and those kinds of pieces. So they get a salary statement of, this is my salary off the salary scale, and here is my total benefits package. And they do sign that they've received a copy of that. So we do try to highlight those
Good.
pieces as well as the other benefits that we offer, from tuition support to conference support and things like that.
Already doing it. Thank you.
Becca, you talked about the employee plus one for the
Yes.
health insurance. What does that number look like?
In terms,
How much is coming out of a person's paycheck for employee plus one?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I did have it in last year's presentation, so I can update that and send that out to you. We're more than glad to do that.
Aaron, you have
Erin
it?
may have that with her.
Not the exact figures, but I have a
Great.
roundabout number.
Thank you.
Most plus one plans right now are a little over $200 per pay period,
Okay,
for each teacher,
okay.
And being paid every 2 weeks or twice a month?
twice a month.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Other questions council has? Hearing none, thank you for being with us. I'm sorry, Katie and Michael aren't here, but please pass along our appreciation for their service to our city. And a special thank you to Molly, who's retiring June 30. Thank you for your service, and we look forward to taking up applications at our next council meeting in May 4, an appointment on May 18. But yes, the work that you do is invaluable, and you're fortunate as a board to have a great staff. The quiet ones behind you, like Stephanie and Julie and Aaron, who do all the heavy lifting. So thank you all for being with us. Any questions or comments from the school board? Concerns, recommendations? Very good. Excellent. Well, thanks for taking care of our precious ones here in the city, and the collaboration that you do with our high school tuition arrangement with Rockbridge County High School, and looking out for the students out there as well. I know that that's part of the process. So With that, unless there are any objections, we will stand adjourned and reconvene at 7 o'clock for our normal meeting, and I'll invite the school board. All right.
He didn't hear you because I had you muted.
Ah,
Try again.
okay. Hey, Jeremy, welcome. So you're with us. Just wanted to do a sound check, make sure we can hear you okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little faint, Yell into that speaker or
I will speak loudly to make sure you can hear me.
terrific. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Glad
sir.
you're with us.
Thank you.
We'll start here in just a couple minutes.
Yes, sir.
Keep everything. I don't remember what I forgot.
It will present it.
Always does, always does. I believe. I believe. Mhm. Hmm. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the April 20th edition of the Lexington City Council. For those of you who came in a few minutes ago, we were having a joint meeting with our school board and getting an update on budget projections and enrollment for the coming year and the challenges that they have in operating the school. And it's always a great time to spend time with our appointees of the school board and taking care of our most precious commodity, our children. Before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to invite anyone who intends to speak tonight to sign up on one of our sheets over here on the table. And there are also agendas if you would like to have one to follow along. And with that, I would like to call this meeting to order. And our first item of business, if you all will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda. I'm not aware of any additions or changes. I will note that Mr. Smith is out of town and unable to be with us. So we have our 5 members of council here to take care of the city's business this evening. And hearing no objections, we will approve the agenda as presented. I'll move right into proclamations. And we have the proclamation recognizing April 15 through 22, 2023 as International Dark Sky Week. And Eileen Craigie, who used to live or grew up in Lexington and now lives in Northern Virginia, is very passionate about Dark Sky Week and sent a note prior to asking me to read this into the record prior to the proclamation. I want to thank the mayor, the council, the residents of Lexington and Natural Bridge State Park for all the support and interest in protecting our shared dark skies in Virginia, and to thank you for issuing your proclamation for International Dark Sky Week in both 2022 and now in 2023. The support here in Virginia is amazing. The governors of Virginia and West Virginia and the mayor of the District of Columbia all came out with proclamations too. The city of Alexandria, city of Falls Church, city of Fairfax, Arlington County, city of Leesburg, town of Vienna, and the town of Ashland have come in too. More on the way. With all of us working together, we can restore and protect the dark skies over Virginia. And with that, I would like to offer the following proclamation. Whereas the aesthetic beauty and wonder of a natural night sky is a shared heritage of all humankind, and whereas the experience of standing beneath a starry night sky inspires feelings of wonder and awe, and encourages a growing interest in science and nature, especially among young people and out-of-area visitors within the local communities. And whereas light pollution has scientifically established economic and environmental consequences, which result in significant impacts to the ecology and human health of all communities. And whereas 80% of the world's population, including many people in Lexington, live under a dome of light pollution, excessive artificial light at night that disrupts natural darkness, and may never experience the visual wonder or ecological and health benefits of living under a dark sky. And whereas light pollution represents a waste of natural resources amounting to roughly 3 billion per year of wasted energy in the United States and contributes to diminished energy security. And whereas the Natural Bridge State Park was designated as Virginia's 5th International Dark Sky Park in April 2021, and Natural Bridge State Park strives to protect all natural resources through good stewardship and environmental education. And whereas now Virginia now has the most dark sky destinations east of the Mississippi River. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and the Lexington City Council, formally declare April 15 through April 22, 2023 as International Dark Sky Week in Lexington, Virginia. And we demonstrate the community's support as local government officials to protect the night sky. This proclamation demonstrates our support for the Natural Bridge State Park's efforts to obtain silver tier dark sky park recognition by the International Dark Sky Association. Be it further resolved, the city of Lexington will support whenever possible the protection of the night sky of Natural Bridge State Park and the community in which we serve. Adopted this 20th day of April, 2023. So I hope that you will all venture out and see the stars. And if you will make the opportunity to wander down to Natural Bridge State Park in their observance of dark sky nights and the events that they have out there, I know that you will find it enjoyable and rewarding, even if it's raining, but especially if it's not. Next, I would like to, we have a special presentation, and I would like to invite Josette Bolova. Did I say that correctly? Excellent. Who's with the Virginia Municipal League. And I would also like to invite Avery Diet to come forward. Avery, as she's coming forward, is the one of many students that submitted an essay, "If I Were Mayor," and was selected for our region, I think number 7, as the winner of the best essay of "If I Were Mayor." And Josette, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like you said, my name is Josette Bolova. I'm with the Virginia Municipal League. So each year at VML, we invite 7th graders from across the state to submit their ideas on how to improve their town or city as part of the If I Were a Mayor contest, essay contest. This year, we asked students to identify a problem in their community, talk to another person about it, and then propose a solution. This year was extremely competitive with hundreds of submissions. Avery is to be congratulated for a thoughtful essay that rose well above the pack to be this year's region winner. On behalf of the Virginia Municipal League, I am happy to present this certificate and this gift card. Additionally, your essay will also be featured in the May issue of our magazine. So congratulations.
Any acceptance speech? Congratulations and thank you for participating. Especially proud of the teacher, network people, right? So thank you for all of that. One of the more enjoyable tasks as mayor to recognize talent and celebrate it. So thank you, Dietz, for your many contributions to the community. Next item on the agenda is public hearings, and we have a public hearing consideration of PS 2023-02. And I would invite Arnie to come up to introduce this topic.
Good evening to you all. We do have a request this evening for a boundary line adjustment. And it is in 3 parts. And I'm going to probably throw out too many tax map numbers to you. But on page 1 of the staff report, which I can't find the total, page 5 of 554, maybe for your entire packet. You see on there 2 parcels that are outlined in orange and 2 parcels that are outlined in red. The 317 Massey Street parcel is that parcel that's outlined in red. Over time, as happens, there were some encroachments over onto the adjoining property. A carport, a driveway, and a short retaining wall to hold up the driveway. And that just happens over time. The property owner wanted to sell the property, and that's, I believe, at that time they realized that there were encroachments, and to fix those encroachments, a boundary line adjustment is being requested to shift that front property line or the side property line over at the front corner over a little bit towards their neighbors. Their neighbor's property address is on Marble Lane at 23 Marble Lane. Ancillary to that are also being proposed, and you can't really see that on your version. I do have 11:17 versions if that's helpful to you.
Anybody need a copy, or are you okay with your laptop?
Good. Okay. There's also an access easement for the retaining wall. So whoever the new purchaser ultimately of 317 Massey Street is, will have a slight easement over the neighboring property. So they have access to the retaining wall to maintain that wall over time. The other 2 minor portions after Mr. Pappas came in with his request, I noticed that both of the properties are made up of 2 parcels each. So that square that you see in orange has 2 parcels underneath it, and the rectangle that's in red has 2 parcels. So I made them aware that along with the request for a boundary line adjustment, they could also throw in basically for free, because it's one application, to vacate their adjoining so they could turn the 2 parcels that they have each into 1 parcel. And they did, both property owners signed the application, and they are asking for their properties to be combined. On the second page of the staff report, you see the boundary line adjustment survey. And just for staff comments, these parcels are non-conforming because they are smaller than what is allowed currently, and they were platted before the adoption of our zoning ordinance. But the fact that they're being combined, 2 parcels into 1 in both instances, they are made less non-conforming, and that is acceptable. You can't make something worse or enlarge a non-conforming issue, but you can improve it by making it a less of a impact. So for those reasons, staff made a recommendation for approval. Planning Commission held a public hearing and also makes a recommendation of approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Members of council have any questions? Hearing none, thank you, Arnie. And at this time, I would like to open the public hearing for PS 2023-02. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to this topic? Hearing none at 7:12, I'd like to close the public hearing and ask for council's consideration.
I move to approve preliminary subdivision application PS 2023-02 for A, the adjustment of boundary lines between 317 Massey Street, tax map number 24-5-19, and 23 Marble Lane, tax map number 24-5-17. B, the vacation of the boundary line between tax parcels 24-5-19 and 24-5-8A. And C, the vacation of the boundary line between tax parcels 24-5-17 and 24-5-15 in accordance with the boundary line adjustment survey for 317 Massey Street, completed by Green Forest Surveys LLC, submitted by the applicant.
A second.
Have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
Just as a side note, 317 Massey used to be the family home of two of Lexington's teachers' coaches. So let's just a FYI.
Bit of trivia. And Mr. Brown, one of the property owners, is with us this evening, and I've just expressed my appreciation on neighbors working to a solid solution and making these properties up to date on their borders and working with the city to accomplish that. So thank you all for being good neighbors. And with that, I would ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0. Thank you all very much. Next item is public hearing, review and consideration of proposed fiscal year 2024 budget and capital improvement plan. Now invite the city manager to take this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will keep my comments short. Our Finance Director, Jennifer Bell, will go into more details just after I finish. And I want to note that in the front of the budget, we always have a budget letter. And most of that we see every year. It's the same thing. It's our financial management policies and our building blocks and budget principles, council goals and priorities, et cetera. And I'm going to skip that. If somebody from the public wants to come in and see that, it's available. It's available online. But you as council members see the same thing every year, and there's nothing new there. I do want to note, however, that from a background situation, the staff, especially Jennifer Bell, our finance director, really get the credit for putting this budget together. They worked many long hours to make sure that in their departments, they have the expenses that will provide the services that this community needs. And it's a very good budget because of their efforts and because of the efforts of Jennifer Bell. I want to note that in my briefing for the packet that I noted the budget is balanced with no substantial fee increases. That should say general fund budget, because obviously there are fee increases in the utility fund. And I will let the finance director explain that, if you will, why we have those increases, and have her deal with the more difficult part of the budget, if you will. I also want to note that one of the things that occurred over the past several years is, as the schools were indicating earlier, compensation is very important these days. And thank you as city council for making the changes in our compensation and pay plans that you have over the last year and a half, because today, as opposed to a year ago or 18 months ago, we're almost fully staffed in most departments. Police department, as a matter of fact, is only has half the vacancies it did 2 years ago. So we're making good progress in filling those positions and retaining those individuals. And I can't give a salary increase all of the credit for accomplishing that, but I do believe it helps. And I do want to say thank you, because it does allow city staff to provide the services and perform the activities that the citizens depend on in our community. One other short note is that you'll see at the back of the materials that you have available, the agency requests, and we have discretionary and non-discretionary agencies. Typically, we have not funded many of our discretionary agencies. Our non-discretionary agencies, of course, typically have to be funded. But when we have discretion in the past, we've decided not to fund those agencies. I've kept up with that policy, if you will, or practice. We do have a few agencies that are discretionary that are funded, RARA being one of those. And I've asked in the budget that we have $20,000 for one-time capital request from RARA. Also TAP into HOPE. And TAP is a very large regional agency covering many jurisdictions, and it does provide on a regular basis services to our community. Improvements and renovations to homes primarily, but some other daycare services and things of that nature. So it's not that we do not get a return from them. We get a very good return, and that small amount of funding that they've requested is very worthwhile. So those are some of the discretionary agency expenditures that are in the budget. And again, the non-discretionary are typically what is requested of those agencies and for the most part required, period. And that is all I will say. And I'll turn this over to the finance director, unless you have any questions, Mr. Mayor or council members, questions of me.
I'll just say for the record that I'm on the board of directors for RARA. And while I do not have a conflict because it is a volunteer position, I will not take any discussion on that line item specifically.
Thank you, Nick. Very good. Jen.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for getting us to this point.
Thank you for the opportunity to present the FY24 budget for public comment. And thank you also to the city manager for the kind words, but it truly is a team effort to get this budget done, and we have a great team in the city. So as the city manager mentioned, we do have a balanced budget for the general fund, and we are projecting an 8% increase in revenues over the FY23 budget. Primarily, we are projecting the largest increases in real and personal property taxes, interest earnings on investments, and of course, the continued growth we're seeing in meals and lodging taxes. We are budgeting for a 6% overall increase in expenses. Notable increases include a proposed 5% salary increase for all city staff, implementing the remaining market adjustments identified in last year's comp study, and insurance costs are expected to increase as well. We already know our health insurance coverage costs are increasing 9.9%. And we're anticipating our proposals on liability and property coverage to increase in the 10 to 15% range once we see those from Versa. And then, of course, as we've seen in our personal lives, the costs associated with electricity and other purchased goods and services have been rising. So we are expecting those to continue to increase. The Lexington City Schools have projected an 8% increase in their budget over FY23. And I'm pleased to report that that translates to the city only into a 1% increase over what they requested our contribution be last year. Their budget is built on the assumption that they will have an ADM of 630 students in grades K through 12, which includes 146 non-resident students. We are proposing to spend $987,206 in equipment replacement. This equipment is requested by our public safety and public works departments and includes items such as a police car, an ambulance, and a new dump truck. We have several capital improvement projects under consideration for FY24. I am most excited about the $3.6 million in street improvements that VDOT will pay for. Other notable projects include additional sewer relining, improvements to municipal buildings, improvements to Jordan's Point Park, as well as street sidewalk resurfacing, stormwater management, and water meter replacements. Our Public Works Director, my esteemed colleague, Patrick Madigan, is here if anybody has any questions about the specific projects. As the city manager mentioned, we are looking to propose an average 7% increase to our customers for water and wastewater. This is largely driven by increases the city is seeing from the MSA. Water is increasing, our wholesale water cost is increasing 8.2%, and wastewater by 4.2% to the city. In addition, as we've discussed in previous meetings, we're expecting several large projects in the next 5, 10, 15 years that will need to be completed at the MSA. So it's important to start building a cash base so that we'll be able to pay for those. This slide here shows the proposed rates broken down by tier. Roughly 58% of our inside city limits customers fall within the 201 to 1100 cubic feet range. Outside city limits, that figure drops a bit to roughly 51% of our customers. And approximately just over a third of our customers fall in the minimum charge category, which is 200 or less. These next two slides review the agency requests that we received this year. And the city manager really detailed this information. This first slide is our mandated agencies. And as the city manager mentioned, we are proposing to pay all of those requests. And the second slide is the discretionary agencies. And again, the city manager already reviewed this, so I won't bore you with duplicating the effort. We are proposing to increase the fees for the municipal swimming pool. Rates haven't been increased in several years. And if I remember correctly, I think Leslie Ayers told me the last time rates were increased, minimum wage was actually $7.50. It's now $12 per hour. So we are proposing these slight increases to the fees at the pool. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jen. Members of council have questions? While you cogitate that, it's always exciting to talk about water and sewer and water meters and asphalt replacement. Is cool stuff. Do like to remind people that when you had the water schedule up there, rate schedule, we have the unique circumstance of having real estate tax exempt universities and churches in our community. And one of the ways that we get additional support from them is if you look closely, instead of getting a volume discount for use of water, you have somewhat of a volume penalty. And so the more water that's utilized, the higher your rate. So working to keep the MSA operating and pumping out good water and processing it, but having our neighbors pay the larger share of the usage to encourage water conservation. So, members of council have anything they want to highlight or questions relative to the budget?
Just a question at our work session. We tried to get to into the detail of the additional police vehicles.
Yes.
And so our budget books included 2 police vehicles, but we understand that it's only 1 police vehicle. And so with the additional or the $72,000 that we wouldn't be allocating for the second police vehicle, will that just remain in the equipment replacement fund?
In the sheets that I'll have prepared for you for our next work session, that is what we are recommending.
I believe we brought this up at the last meeting, but projects not in the budget are projects that we could talk about at a later point when we see if there is surplus or money left over.
Funds available.
Funds
Exactly.
available. Okay.
Yeah, and the big thing relative to sidewalks or projects into the future, the CIP, adding those to the wish list and starting to enter them in. When we look at the CIP, it by no means addresses everything that we need to face at this point. So there are lots of opportunities and for capital improvements throughout the city, and with proper planning, we've got a good plan and the funding mechanisms to carry that. But yes, we can talk about potential or additions to the CIP in our future budget work sessions, to be sure.
And if I could follow up on one other point from the work session, the improvements to Lime Kiln Park in the CIP for, I think it was FY26. I spoke with the Public Works Director and we're actually going to amend that number down to 175,000 in the next iteration that we share with you.
Very good. Any other questions?
Just, and you may want to do it after the public hearing, but when is our next work session? Next Thursday? Have we scheduled that yet?
I think it's on
Yes.
there as needed. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
been made
that's
official.
what I was wondering. And I think it is as needed. So I didn't know if we were planning on having that next Thursday or not.
At this point, unless council wants to, is content. Whatever your pleasure. I think it was scheduled for 5 o'clock next Thursday.
I'd
That's
prefer
fine.
to hear from the public.
Sure.
And then we can make that decision, but otherwise I just would assume plan on meeting.
Right.
Happy to do it.
Okay. Very good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jen. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing for review and consideration of proposed fiscal year 2024 budget and capital improvement plan. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this? Yes. Ms. Lindsay, come on up. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Sure. I'm Lindsay Perez. I'm the Executive Director of the Rockbridge Area Relief Association, and my address is 228 Catalpa Place in Lexington. So first of all, I wanted to thank the council for including RARA's one-time request of $20,000 for renovations to our neighborhood grocery in the proposed budget. One of the goals of our 2022-2024 strategic plan is to assist people in the area who could potentially benefit from our services, but for one reason or another are not using them. And we know that there are people out there. Part of the way that we are going to do this is through renovations to what we call our neighborhood grocery, used to be the food pantry, to create a more safe and welcoming environment that is easily accessible for everyone. When the city of Lexington provided space for RARA at minimal cost starting in 2011, the investment from the city transformed our operations. We were able to expand in ways that we never could before. However, we were limited in the physical changes that we could make. And thanks to the generosity of a few local donors, RARA was able to purchase the building in 2021, ensuring that we have a permanent, stable home to continue our important work. With ownership, we will invest considerable resources to improve our facilities, and the city could once again play a crucial role in that process. So this project is possible thanks to the support of several groups in the community, including Rockbridge County, which has included it actually in this year's budget instead of putting it in the draft for next year. Rockbridge Community Health Foundation, Washington and Lee, the Community Foundation, and Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. And the additional support of City Council will provide us with the infrastructure to expand our services and continue delivering services to both residents of the city and surrounding region for many years to come. So I appreciate your time and consideration, and I hope that you will reach out if you would like to see a tour of what our plans are for renovations, or if you have any other questions as well.
Members of council have any questions? Public hearing, we usually don't have a back and forth, but given RARA's special presence, welcome it. Nick has nothing to say. because
There was a
he's-
question that came up at our work session. Are there kitchen modifications or is it? Okay.
No, it is just to the upstairs part of the building. So we will be constructing a waiting room so that people can actually wait safely out of the elements and the heat and cold. And then some private intake offices and a restroom for shoppers as well as some improvements to the grocery.
Thank you.
Hearing no other questions, I will give you the opportunity. There's something special happening, I heard.
Yes.
So if you'd like to remind us all.
We're celebrating our 50th anniversary. Technically, it was last year that we completed 50 years, but we wanted to wait a little bit until things settled down before we could celebrate. And so next Saturday from 4 to 7 p.m. at our building, we are having a celebration and we invite all of you to attend. You can find more information on our website.
Tickets are still available.
They are still available. Buy them now before they sell out.
That's right. Great. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being with us. And for those of you curious and new to council meetings, when we have a conflict and not participate in the discussion, we step down from the dais. So Nick, thank you for doing so. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this subject? Hearing none, at 7:32, I'd like to close the public hearing and ask for council's consideration.
Can I just ask that for our work session? Is there any chance we could either have it at 4 or at 7? I'd like to participate if I can, and there's planning commission at 5.
Sure.
What are we in the process of considering?
Okay.
Because we're
Kicking it down the road,
Right.
certainly.
Yeah.
Our work session is scheduled, I think, for 5 o'clock next Thursday. Anyone have an objection to 4 o'clock,
I do. Yeah, it'd be better. Later would be better.
7 o'clock would be better? Any objection over here?
What would you have to do?
We'll move it to 7 o'clock next Thursday. We'll make sure planning commission finishes on time. And that will be in City Hall for folks who are looking for exciting conversation. Excellent. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes. And those were sent to you via email. I hope you had a chance to review them.
I had one minor correction on the regular meeting minutes for April 6th on page 4 under review and consideration of the revised city council conflict of interest code of conduct policy, where it says discussion, city council discussed confirmation from the state that a locality cannot deviate from the state's code of ethics. If that could just be changed to the state code for conflict of interest.
Does anyone have an objection to that change? Thank you for the keen eye. Otherwise, good work, Janie. And unless there's an objection, we will approve the minutes with that modification. The minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is citizens' remarks and comments. And we are thrilled to have members of the public join it. And thank you for signing up. I've got a few folks here I'll call on in just a moment. But wanted to remind folks during this item, I ask that the following guidelines be followed. We ask that you stand at the podium and state your name and address for the clerk for the record. To make your comments to the council as a whole and speak just to council. We ask that you be brief and state your position and provide facts. Provide written statements and or supporting materials to the clerk for distribution to the council and city manager. Debate is prohibited. And lastly, we ask that you speak clearly as we want to hear what you have to say. And with that, we also generally have the public comments be at a maximum of 3 minutes unless you're representing an organization, and then 5 minutes is permitted. But with those disclosures of sorts, I would ask B. Johnson to please come forward as the first person who would like to speak. Ms. Johnson, welcome. Glad you're with us. Hold that microphone down so we can hear you. There we go.
All right, is this better?
Yes, ma'am. Thank
right.
you.
My name is Beatrice Johnson. I reside at 205 Massey Street here in Lexington. I am here to ask the council or whomever has the ownership of the property located at 201 Randolph Street. This is a burned house that has been there ever since 2016. This is an eyesore to our community. It is also a danger to our community due to the fact that animals could habitate there, and people walking by could easily be attacked. With your children in the yard, you don't know where these animals may come from. We feel like that this house has been in this disarray ever since 2016. Something could surely have been done to this house by now. It's an eyesore to our community. It is a disgrace to the community. When you think of tourists coming through, our property value, anything along those lines is not a very good condition for us to have to live with. And we would like to see something done yesterday better than tomorrow.
Very good, Ms. Johnson. Thank you for sharing that with us. And yes, the tragic fire that took place left it in poor condition, to be sure. I hope your water and sewer replacement, the grass is growing in your yard and the street's nice and smooth. And you can thank that neighbor for allowing the construction folks to use that as a staging area the past year and a half while all of that mess was being made. And thank you for enduring that mess.
Also, I'm sorry,
yes.
excuse me, I have noticed since then, there has been a few trucks that park over there from now and then. And the streets have been finished, so I don't understand. I hope they're not gonna turn that into a parking lot. Also, I had submitted a petition with over 100 names on it pertaining to this property. So I hope you've taken a look at those as well.
Yes, ma'am. We sure have.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being with us and raising that issue. And I know the neighbors want to be good neighbors and work towards restoring that house to its original glory. Next individual is Marquita Dunn. Marquita, if you want to come forward. And then following Marquita will be Mary Ellen Cook. Good evening, Marquita. Welcome. Thank you for being with us.
My name is Marquita Dunn, and I reside at 222 Massey Street. For the past 7 or 8 years, I've had to look at this monstrosity of an eyesore located on the corner of Randolph and Massey Street. It is an embarrassment to the Diamond Hill, Green Hill neighborhood. Sitting on the porch on Sunday at 201 Massey Street, as the wind was blowing, what was left of the tin roof was flapping and very noisy. The yard at times is used as a beer can depository, and I've witnessed people letting their dogs do their business in the yard. Just a few weeks ago, a pile of brush that had been there for maybe a year, close to it, was removed. As a resident of the neighborhood, I ask that the issue of this dwelling be resolved. I leave you with this question. Would this dwelling have sat on Main Street or surrounding neighborhoods in the condition that it's in for as long as it has? Thank you.
Thank you, Marquita. Mary Ellen, welcome.
Welcome. I am Mary Ellen Cook. I reside at 4 North Lewis Street. It's pretty much a reiteration of what we've just heard from both Bea and Marquita. I did contact the present owner of the house out of courtesy to let her be aware that it's a topic of conversation as of tonight. She may or may not be in, I don't know. I've never met her, but she may be here. Anyway, 3 minutes. Thank you, Mayor Friedman and members of City Council for giving me this opportunity to address a Diamond Hill neighborhood concern about an uninhabitable hulk of a house at Randolph and the corner of Massey. It was built in 1893 during William McKinley's presidency and almost burned to the ground in February of 2016. It is currently owned by Shy Clark, owner of city and county real estate here in Lexington. As I said, I was in contact with them today to let them know if they were interested in adding anything. Diamond Hill neighbors have been patiently waiting for more than 7 years for plans as to what will be done to remedy this eyesore. We can no longer use the COVID-19 pandemic as an excuse for lack of immediate attention to this problem. A petition's been signed and tonight it's being submitted to you, the council, regarding our dissatisfaction. We need to know the plan for the near future. During the Diamond Hill utility project of 21-22, contractors did park their trucks and equipment on the property. We hope this does not turn into a permanent use as a parking lot on a prime city lot. The main problems are obvious. Number one, even though it may have a bit of historical value, the structure is hazardous. A dilapidated chain link fence around the perimeter of just the structure has long outlived its usefulness as a temporary solution. Number two, this hulk of a structure lowers value of the adjacent properties. We've heard that already this evening. Number three, there is a substantial loss to the city in real estate taxes in its present state. As I regularly attend city council meetings, the most often heard cry is that there's a shortage of housing in Lexington, especially low-income housing. Can we see a plan for a new look on that corner where everyone is in agreement? Thank you for the opportunity to voice our neighborhood concerns. They are legitimate and should be heard. We await a response in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. And personally, thank you for reaching out to the neighbor and seeking their input and connectivity, because that's the first thing city staff will do is call the owner. So it's always fantastic when neighbors work together, just like we heard earlier with the folks on Marble and Massey working together to resolve the property line. So I'm optimistic that Shai, who has owned the property since March of 2021, will begin work. The parking lot is not allowed use for the property, so I don't think it will become a parking lot, but encourage you to continue to communicate with Shai and her family as they work towards a plan. I know that personally, when I contacted them, their intention is to restore it to a single family home. There's certainly some challenges with all the weather and destruction that has occurred from the fire, but hope springs eternal. And I know that they want to be good neighbors and welcome the insights. And we'll look forward to staff following up with you and the other folks that spoke tonight as we forge forward on a plan. Certainly. Thank you for being here. Those are the only folks I had signed up to speak on the sheet this evening. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on any topic, related or not? Hearing none, at 7:45, I will close the citizens' remarks portion of our agenda and move straight into boards and commissions. I'm sorry, into consent agenda, excuse me, trying to jump too far ahead. The resolution to request a zoning ordinance amendment is the item on the consent agenda, and I welcome council's consideration. Preferably this evening.
Just want to clarify that it's proper to have a resolution on consent agenda.
But
Typically we have a resolution. I just want to be sure, because I feel like
Sure.
that's the first time I've ever seen that.
right. I'd ask for Jeremy to chime in loud and proud.
Sure. From a legal perspective, it is fine to have it on the consent agenda. The
See if you can lean
requirement
closer
is
to
that there be a
microphone.
motion.
We-
Sure. I'm sorry. From a legal standpoint, it's fine to have it on the consent agenda. As a matter of practice, you can choose to do so or not. But as long as there is a motion, a second, and a vote of a majority, then it can be adopted to the consent agenda. A resolution can.
Very good. I think it was intended, since this is just directing the planning commission, the resolution speaks to requesting the zoning ordinance amendment to be explored by the planning commission and reviewed by the planning commission. That there may not be anything to discuss, but unless there's an objection, we'll take it off consent and just have it as an item.
No objection. I just wanted clarification, because again, In my 8 years, we have not ever had a resolution.
Right.
On the consent agenda.
And I'm not sure that we had any resolutions to initiate activity with the planning commission. So cross the Ts and dot the Is.
I'll then make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, sir. Have a motion and a second. And because it is the consent agenda, there is no discussion, and ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Or yes, unanimously, 5-0. Under unfinished business, we are taking up the item of selection of city attorney this evening. But the Horse Center will move forward into the future. And relative to the selection of city attorney, as you may recall, I appointed a committee of Mr. Alligood and myself to review the two applications that we received. And on behalf of Mr. Alligood and myself, who served on the search committee, I want to thank the two who responded to the requests, the two individuals and firms. Also, I want to publicly thank the attorneys who provided letters of recommendation and support for the applicants. I personally received a few calls, and there were a couple letters that were submitted as well in part of the packets. The committee brings forward the following motion. We move that the Lexington City Council appoint Jeremy Carroll to the position of city attorney to exercise all authority granted to the city attorney under the city's charter and the general laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and to authorize and direct the city manager to develop a contract with Mr. Carroll establishing the terms of his 4-year appointment. As this comes from a committee, it does not need a second, and I welcome council's discussion and consideration.
Well, there's a motion, so we just need a vote then if there's no discussion.
Very good. Thank you. Roll call vote on this as well. Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all very much. Reports and communications, Blue Ridge Resource Authority. There is no report. We have not met. Main Street, Lexington. I'm not aware if Mr. Smith sent any report. Is anyone aware? We'll make everyone aware, if you haven't seen the big banner hanging off Cornerstone Bank Building, it's sidewalk sale time. And all the downtown merchants will be hosting the sidewalk sale starting, I think, at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So go early for the interesting, eclectic things that haven't sold in the store and will be on the street. Planning Commission, Ms. Strawn.
Yeah. Planning Commission met on Thursday, April 13th. And the Planning Commission considered an application by the city of Lexington to amend the lot width requirements for multifamily dwelling units and townhouses. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to amend the minimum lot width for multifamily dwelling units to 100 feet and to continue with the current requirement for townhouses at 20 feet for each unit. And this will come before council at our next meeting. And that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Regional Tourism, Mr. Betts.
No report.
Thank you, sir. Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
No report.
Nothing about children playing sports, baseball, apple pie,
My report last meeting was too long.
pickleball. Fair enough. Thank you. Threshold, Miss Alexander.
No report.
Very good. Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Briefly, I have a
Going to hold you to that.
short report.
Okay.
MSA board meets next Tuesday in this room, 5 o'clock. We're going to be discussing the articles of incorporation that appear to be moving ahead for the MSA. And there will be a public hearing on the MSA water rates at that time as well. And you heard earlier this evening where the MSA raised its wholesale rates 4%, and Lexington City added their extra onto it for a total of 7% overall rate increase. And so, but they have those retail wholesale rates have not yet been formally approved by the MSA, and that looks to happen next Tuesday. So come to the meeting and hear about our wastewater projects and our raw water, drinking water modernization plans as well. We expect to have more engineering information next Tuesday about those two major projects. End of report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Alligood? Worth noting, celebration last week of Senator Warner in town bringing a $3 million check to help with the the capital issues at MSA, and thankful for our friends in the county for soliciting that earmark and receiving a check for that $3 million. It'll be spent quickly. Under my report, two items just of interest. Number one, if you have not made the time to read your VML, Virginia Municipal League, I want to say catalog, but magazine, the January, February, Michelle Gowdy, the director, wrote a really nice article about so frequently we think about first responders and we recognize them and honor them, and as we should, but sometimes that get left behind are the 911, Central Dispatch, and others that support and get the ball rolling when there's an emergency, and things that happen that we don't even, not even aware of in our day-to-day lives. So I encourage you to read that article and reflect on that, and also join me in our appreciation for our first responders, of fire, EMS, police, as well as 911 and the many others, including our public works folks, specifically keeping the water, sewer running, and the grass mowed and potholes filled and everything else. So thank you for all the work that you all do as a group. And if you don't have enough to read, in the March edition, there's an article about great chemistry. And Jim and I were interviewed by one of the writers for VML about how to good relationships, how do they come about with city managers and elected officials. So there are about a dozen people that are included in the article, and it's a good read and will give you a good laugh seeing our two-step on expressing great chemistry. And lastly, speaking of unsung heroes, at the PDC meeting this past Monday, Rebecca Joyce was recognized. She is retired from the PDC, and she's made a living out of floods and disasters, at least preparing for such things. And Rebecca, you may have seen over the years, she came and made a couple of presentations, but there's always a calendar that came out that every day was something to celebrate, whether it was Marshmallow Day or Square Dancing Day or something. But those were always equipped with pictures from the past, specifically disasters that had occurred in our community within the Central Shenandoah district. So her presence will be missed, and wish her a great long retirement. And I'm not sure exactly who will be picking up the preparation for floods and disasters, but it's a big piece of our work as community leaders, making sure we're prepared when the unexpected happens. And with that, I would like to call on the city manager for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Just a few notes from the Fire and Rescue Department. There was a 3-day training session with representatives of Pierce Manufacturing so the department could be trained on the new ladder truck that is soon going to be in service here in the community. Amazingly, a blind person was walking along I-81 and their hand was struck by the mirror of a passing vehicle. The department responded to the call and took that individual to the hospital for medical care. There was also a pedestrian struck in a parking lot and suffered minor injuries, and the department took that individual also to the hospital for care. Exercising his leadership abilities, Chief Dickerson attended both the local and regional fire and rescue meetings recently. During a recent high wind event, the department assisted Rockbridge County Fire and Rescue at 2 brush fires caused by downed electric lines. The department also assisted Rockbridge County Fire and Rescue at a serious trailer tractor accident and fire on I-81, and assisted a seriously injured individual to the medevac waiting and then to the hospital. Notes from the police department. Recently, there have been some complaints on North Lewis Street near Thompson's Knoll about vehicles that are parked there for excessive period of time. So the department is observing those vehicles and trying to ascertain why they are there and move them along. One vehicle, I believe, has been towed, and people from outside neighborhoods from time to time do use street frontage for parking their vehicles in the community, as we all know. In a similar aspect, construction trailer on Jordan Street was removed as the permit for the construction had expired and the neighbors wanted it removed from the area, and it had just been parked there for many days with no reason. 2 classes from Lilburn Downing Middle School, 40 students toured the department recently. Chief Green met with VMI Chief Marshall and Commandant Bogart to discuss public safety updates of shared interest to VMI and to the city. Corporal Haston attended Child in Need of Services training. The City Office of Elections is coordinating with the department to designate the department conference room as an emergency polling location. Such a location must be made available for voting should a serious emergency arise that prevents voting in designated voting locations. And 22 hours of foot patrol was performed in the community last week. You may have noticed, but or may not have, that electric vehicle charging stations have been put in at Sheetz recently, and Tesla put in those 8 supercharging stations at the at the Sheetz on East Nelson Street. The Community Foundation was able to provide $5,000 in funding support to the North Main Street Gateway project, and they also provide an additional $3,000 to replacement of holiday wreaths and bows. So some of those expenditures of Main Street that we all were aware of have been undertaken or provided by the Community Foundation. Review of development proposals for the former VDOT site. A meeting of that panel to review the proposal we received was to occur earlier this week. Unfortunately, one of the principals with the group that had made the proposal was seriously ill and could not make it, so that meeting is being rescheduled. The Industrial Development Authority will be meeting next week, Wednesday at 5 o'clock in the conference room on the 2nd floor of City Hall. And agenda items include a review of the VDOT site proposal, no action, just to brief them on that proposal, make them aware that sometimes we do have unanticipated costs, and to maybe ask them to consider should those costs arise in the future using some of the funds they have to cover some of those costs. They will also have a briefing on the potential renewal of the 1% tax for the Horse Center, so that when that arises, should it come before them, they understand what their role is and the history of that issue. There's also a request from Mountain Gateway Community College for $40,000 for a regional workforce development center, as you've seen and been briefed on in the budget. That is an economic development project, of course. The county is participating, as is our sister city of Buena Vista. And they've been asked to, again, consider using some of the funding they have available to undertake this one-time economic development expense. The final issue that is before them is a request from Washington Lee University to amend a bond issue of 2018 because the requirements have changed for those types of bonds. There's a different interest formula in place as opposed to what was there when the bond was first issued in 2018. I should note that the IDA now has $210,000 in their budget. In the current fiscal year, we anticipate $28,000. There's already been $28,000 in fees added to that amount. And it looks like next year, because of the fees that are in place, they are on track to collect about $38,000. So they do have some significant funds to be utilized for economic development purposes, which is why we're initiating some of those conversations. Not to say that they will agree with any of the recommendations or requests put before them, but I do know that they've over the years said they'd like to be involved, and since they have funding available, how can it be used to best promote the needs of the community? So there are some opportunities being presented to them. As we all know, there was a fiber cut on East Washington Street last week, and this has been turned over to the city insurance, and all the parties who were involved are reviewing the factors of why that occurred, and also to be sure that we work together collectively to be sure something of this nature does not occur in the future. So that is my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from City Council.
Thank you, Jim. Members of council have any questions for the city manager? Hearing none, thank you. And always amazing the things going on in the opportunities that our police force and fire department have to contend with. Next item on the agenda is city attorney. Jeremy, any words of wisdom?
Just a few, Mr. Mayor. I hope you can hear me okay. I'll lean in close here. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the confidence you've shown in me appointing me city attorney. I appreciate that. I'm humbled and honored. I have very much enjoyed the past few months working with city staff and with ladies and gentlemen on council, and I look forward to continuing that relationship. I do want to just mention a couple of things. Last meeting, the city council adopted the code of ethics. As was discussed during that meeting, there is a requirement now that we modify the bylaws of the planning commission. Mr. Glazer sent those to me today. I've marked them up and sent them back to him. There is a notice period for amending the bylaws, but that'll be forthcoming. Just wanted you to know that that is in process of being taken care of. Mr. Hallis had asked me to take a look at a contract with Buena Vista in Rockbridge County for the Human Services Center. I've been in contact with Vicki Huffman and Brian Kearney, and so hopefully we'll have that wrapped up in short order. Mr. Sigler had raised a couple of weeks ago the Berry case out of Fairfax County. And I wanted everyone to know that Mr. Hallis and I have talked and talked about how to move forward with going back through any electronic meetings during the pandemic. And we've got a plan in place where we'll review those minutes and make sure there are no ordinary actions that need to be addressed going forward, just to make sure there are no issues like Fairfax County is confronting. Lastly, on a personal matter, some of you are aware, and just to let everyone know who may not be aware, I am changing law firms in the very near future. I'll be joining the firm of Spillman, Thomas and Battle in downtown Roanoke. I'm looking forward to that professional opportunity. But again, it will be doing much of the same thing with actually some of the same people. So I will obviously be taking the city of Lexington as a client with me, and I'm looking very much forward to that. Mr. Mayor, I hope that when I get to my new office, I'll have a better Zoom connection, so you won't have to be too worried about my audio. And lastly, I want to mention I saw Michelle Gowdy today, since you mentioned her earlier, and she passed along her hello to you.
Terrific. Thank you, Jeremy. And yes, we'll work on that audio as we work with you virtually, and welcome you, of course, frequently in person. So we'll
yes, sir.
Master technology here. Thank you for that report and for the good work that you're doing on behalf of the citizens of Lexington.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is new business, consideration of hosting a Gold Star Memorial, and I'll call on the city manager to introduce this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With us tonight is Mr. Jaden and David Kainer, and they have requested or proposed that they'd like to place at their expense through fundraising and other efforts, a Gold Star Memorial here in the city of Lexington for Rockbridge County and the city of Lexington. A Gold Star Memorial is provided for those residents and families of our area who have given their lives in service to our country in the military. And we do have, of course, 2 residents who did make that sacrifice some years back. And that's Captain Andrew Ross and First Lieutenant Stephen Chase Prasnicki. But there are 2 other memorials currently in the state of Virginia, and I believe the Kainer family has been involved in both of those, one very directly. So they'd like to do a presentation this evening. They've looked at several sites within the city, and there is a site that seems very, very adequate in Jordan's Point Park. If you've looked at the presentation and the map of Jordan's Point, you'll see where that location is. There is a pavilion, parking very close to it, directly adjacent, so that individuals who may be disabled, whether they're veterans or others, could get to the memorial. The pavilion, of course, would be a good location if somebody's there for a remembrance or some other type of a ceremony at the memorial to gather under, whether it's from to stay out of the heat or out of the rain, etc., when they are there for whatever purpose. So they would like to come forward today and this evening and make this presentation. Jaden is a student at Washington Lee University, also an ROTC candidate at VMI. So he's very connected to the community and wants to leave this as something that we can utilize in the community and remember our veterans through, and those who sacrificed so much for us. So
thank you so much for the nice words. Good evening.
Good evening, Jared. Welcome. Glad you're here, and I would invite you if you could state your name and address for the record.
My name's Jaden Keener. I currently live in one of the third-year housings at WNL.
Very good. Thank you.
So as the city manager said, I'm a junior at Washington Lee. I am also on the baseball team, and I am a ROTC cadet in a dual program via WNL and VMI. My family has a strong military background, with both sides being my grandfathers and great grandfathers serving in the military. And I also plan to commission into the United States Army after I graduate from WNL. But before that, my dad would take me to Walter Reed Medical Hospital in Bethesda, Maryland when I was growing up. And we go and visit amputees and other veterans and their families to try and offer support. But it was difficult, but a great experience to learn from. But I never really got to learn from the families that didn't go, because they had loved ones that died serving our country. So we are presenting on behalf of the Woody Williams Foundation, and they are responsible for helping us design, create, and establish a Gold Star Memorial in our desired location. And so you may be asking, what is a Gold Star family? And so that is any family that has lost a loved one that is either a brother, sister, mother, father, daughter, or son that has died fighting for our country and our freedom. And so the main goal is to honor these families and their sacrifices by building memorials and by providing scholarships for these families for their children to go to college. And so the foundation was originally created by this man, Herschel Woody Williams. He is a World War II veteran and also a Battle of Iwo Jima veteran who received the Medal of Honor for his courageous actions during that battle and for going above and beyond the call of duty. And so his main goal was to establish a Gold Star Memorial in his hometown in West Virginia. And after that was built, he knew that he had to build more and hopefully in every state across the United States. And so currently there's 118 Gold Star Memorials across the United States and including Guam, with goals including Lexington to build roughly 60 more and even more so, hoping to make sure every single state has one. And so our goals is to bring the next one to Lexington, Virginia. Our committee consists of myself, my father, who, as the city manager discussed, was responsible for the fundraising of the last two Gold Star Memorials within Virginia within the last 4 years. Sarah Geeson Ross, who is the Gold Star sister to Lexington native Captain Andrew Ross, and one of my teammates on the baseball team, John Torrey. So here are some logistics to do with the memorial. It is roughly 15,000 pounds of granite across 4 very large panels, ranging anywhere from 3 to 6 feet tall. And overall together, they are roughly 15 feet long. They sit upon about 10,000 pounds of concrete supporting the structure, and is estimated to be around $60,000 to build the memorial. This is the front of one of the memorials, and as you can see, there are 4 separate panels with individualized designs, and so the fronts are all custom made for the individual community and who it's representing, but they abide by the 4 pillars of the Woody Williams Foundation, which include homeland, family, patriot, and sacrifice. So what we need is hopefully a location to build the memorial. And we've really liked Jordan's point a lot. We also hope to gain community support and advertise in local businesses with posters with QR codes or links to the donation page. And we also hope to hold fundraising events via the schools. I am planning to host an event in the coming month with aims to raise around $2,500. And so currently we have raised $32,500 prior to today, and out of the $60,000 leaves us only around $28,000 left, and hopefully it goes just as fast as we plan on finishing the fundraising prior to my graduation. And so why is this important? Sadly, there will always be deaths in the military, whether we are in war or not. But as the city manager said, we lost two men, native Lexington men who, First Lieutenant Stephen Chase Presnicki, who died on June 27th, 2012, and Captain Andrew Ross, who died November 27th, 2018. Both these men were Rockbridge County High School graduates and both attended West Point Academy in New York and commissioned out of there as second lieutenants and went on to serve their country. Furthermore, Virginia has suffered 206 casualties in between the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, making it the 10th highest casualties in the United States. So these families deserve memorials and ways of honoring their sacrifice and their loved ones. So this is how we plan on collecting their donations. We have a QR code made, which takes you to the link, or you can just go straight to the link. And it's very easy, just credit card or however you plan on doing it. Or you can do checks via mail to the Woody Williams Foundation, indicating that it's for the Lexington Memorial. So this is the memorial that was actually made on my father's property. So this is the back of the memorial. Down at the bottom, there's a tiny plaque that tells people what the memorial is all about and who it's for. And then on the back, I know you guys can't read that, but it says, Gold Star Families Memorial Monument, a tribute to Gold Star families and relatives who sacrificed a loved one for our freedom. And so on the back, this is consistent across all the different memorials that are built. These are all the same, whereas the front was all custom built. And then as you can see, there's a silhouette of a soldier saluting. And so between Lexington's rich military history and not only the families, the Presnicki family and the Ross family, but also all the other families that have lost someone and sacrificed so much, I can think of no greater reasons that Lexington is an excellent choice for the next Gold Star Family Memorial.
Very good. Thank you. Humbling to think about, and thank you for taking on this endeavor. Members of council have any questions?
I mean, I just would say, obviously, thank you for planning to serve our country and going through the dual program, being a Washington Lee student and also an ROTC cadet. Thanks to your family for doing a couple of these installations already in the Commonwealth, and thanks for picking Lexington as your next location. I guess my question, it's partly to you, but partly to the city manager, because it just seems something that we will want to support in the right way to support it. And so I don't know if our city manager will look to council to make a motion to support the endeavors in any appropriate way, if we're to that point, or if you already know what you might need from the city. But it's something that we've heard about. Obviously now it's the presentation. It's something that I think that we want to be a partner, if that's an appropriate term, but just the right way that you would see us partnering with you. And if our city manager looks for anything from us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Siegler. What I would recommend is that city council approve a location so that they can get started, and with their fundraising efforts, be sure to assure those who are donating that there is a suitable location, and that you agree that it is a suitable location that can be made available to them. They are not asking for financial support, so there's no financial support requested from the city. The only issue they have raised is that could they get support for our city crews to help with the concrete, pouring it, not financing the cost of the concrete. So I'm sure we'll hold a conversation about that. I don't know when the appropriate time will be to lay that concrete, what type of city crews we might have available at that time, but we'll have to work that out to be sure that when it is appropriate, we either can do it appropriately or we just cannot, and they'll have to have somebody else come in and do that work. That is all that they're asking, and that I would recommend city council approve.
Well, then I'll make a motion that we provide a location that is suitable at Jordan's Point Park. Obviously, the city manager will designate the exact area, but I'd like to make that motion that we do provide that location to continue this project. And I'll throw in there that we appreciate that Public Works will also provide any in-kind support that is appropriate to support your endeavors, that be the motion.
Second.
Have a motion second, Ms. Tron?
Just a discussion, a suggestion to keep in mind. I think the location in general is great. You might just consider, does it make sense being closer to the ADA accessible path? And if in the Jordan's Point plan, as I remember, there's going to be a playground. And if you maybe just keep it as far away from the playground, just so it is kept, respectful, is a suggestion.
Good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Would like to add one thing. With these memorials, and I'm a honorary board member of the Woody Williams Foundation. As my son said, I've done two. We just finished actually the concrete pad in Chesapeake, Virginia today. So I was on the conference call driving down here from Northern Virginia. The one big thing that the foundation really takes very seriously is there's a lot of people that don't know what a Gold Star family is that this memorial acts as a reference of education. How do we teach our children and those that are coming behind us of what service and sacrifice is all about? So, we look at it as a way of being able to not only reach the community, to be able to honor those that have given their lives, but that we can teach, that we can educate. And so I think from a community standpoint, it serves as a very strong point to be able to even teach in our schools to children that don't know what this is all about. And we've seen it on the memorial on my property in Lovettsville in Loudoun County on our farm, as I've had elementary schools and students come out, which has been a pretty cool experience. So we had over 130 photos left behind at the memorial. So I will tell you that they will visit. I can promise you that things will be left behind. We keep them in safekeeping in our barn back there, but if it's something inside of the community that someone takes responsibility and says, hey, you know what, we want to make sure that it's kept upright. We want to make sure, but you'll see it all the time. I see it constantly. I was just out at my property 2 days ago and there were flowers that were set there. So, we take these things seriously. There's certain times of the year, the last Sunday in the month of September is Gold Star Families Day. We automatically put flowers out there so people can go and lay flowers at the memorial on behalf. And so these are just things that we do on our own, but I just wanted to share that with you guys. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Perhaps we could share a copy of our Jordan's Point design plan so that they can make a better decision about exactly where they want that, so that it's in a safe place and an accessible place. And maybe not sitting behind the shelter, but maybe more centered or wherever is more appropriate.
Certainly, we can do that. Yes.
On the Jordan's Point campus is the motion and the intention.
Yeah.
Jaden, a couple of questions. For my understanding, when you look at the one that will be constructed here, and for instance, the one that's constructed at your home, is it for essentially all Gold Star recipients or families? Okay, this won't be for Chase and Drew specifically. Okay.
And so Woody passed away last June. Woody was the 47th American in U.S. history to lay at rest in the nation's capital. Woody took on 100 people on Iwo Jima, and let's just say Woody won. But Woody, one of Woody's jobs as a young child was to literally, he tried to get into the Marine Corps when he was 15 and they told him to go away. So he came back when he was 17, but one of his jobs was to deliver telegrams via taxi cab to families that had lost somebody. And it left a huge impact on his life. Not only, when he was on Iwo Jima, they assigned him 2 men on his left and 2 men on his right. He didn't know those men's names. And 2 of them had passed on Iwo Jima. About 10 years ago, Woody's grandsons tracked down the citation from his Medal of Honor and found out who those men were. And Woody went on Veterans Day to visit their grave sites. So he's a remarkable man. I spent a lot of time with him over the last few years, and he just he had to get it done. And now he's just got, they call it Woody's Warriors are behind him. So, right. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Very good. Do you know where in West Virginia Woody was from?
Huntington.
Huntington, okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so they put one in the cemetery there and then boy, they've got one now at the Capitol. They've got, I think 6 of them in West Virginia. Let's just say there was not gonna be anybody stopping Woody in West Virginia. So
Absolutely.
but yeah, there's I was on the conference call coming down just between now and the one that we dedicate on May 28th in Chesapeake. And if you all want to take a ride, 1:00 to City Park in Chesapeake on Memorial Day weekend, Sunday, May 28th. We'll be dedicating that one. That'll be the 124th in the United States. To put that in perspective, the one that's on my property was the 65th in the United States. That was in September 11th of 2020. So between now and then, there's supposed to be 6 more dedications of memorials. Woody's goal was to have 100 before he died, and there was 106. So, yeah.
Remarkable man, to
Oh,
be sure.
very much so, yeah. And he would also know when he'd been playing too much at nighttime sometimes, because his grandsons would always stay with him in his room. He'd get up at 4:00 in the morning, lights are going on and on. He's doing his calisthenics, telling everybody he has to shave and they got to get up. And they're like, Papa, we just got here at 2:00 this morning because everybody's been hanging out, having too much fun. Yeah, so.
In addition to these memorials, the Woody Williams Foundation, what are the endeavors? You said you're on the board.
Yeah, so they do so for example, actually a member of Jaden's baseball team's family's involved with a few minor league projects down in North Carolina. They're actually hosting a Gold Star Family Day at a minor league baseball park. And so they bring all the kids, bring all the families, and these are just things that they continue to do, scholarship funds for children that don't, that didn't have too much, and so it's one of those things that they try to get as active as they can. Now that Woody is gone, Chad Graham is Woody's grandson. Chad actually went for his master's in nonprofit management, so he runs the foundation to date. And so it's a small team, all based out of Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah, it's a fun group, and to see everybody sort of rally behind him is pretty much very excited. When he asked what I thought about this idea, I was like, this is a big job. It's not, it's no joke. I've raised a lot of money in 4 years and a lot of events, and you sit there and you get about halfway. And so when we got this donation recently, number one, I was in shock that, oh my goodness, we're already halfway home. But usually what's happened is you get about halfway there and then all of a sudden the stall comes, because everybody gets really excited and they start donating money. Then you see a stall and you hit this brick wall, and then you got to push through it. And then you hope that someone comes in, and now it's like, wow, we've already got halfway there. And it's only been, I think maybe we approached it maybe a month or so ago. So it's a little bit shocked, but his goal was to have the money raised before he left school. My goal was to have the memorial in place before he left school. So yeah, so I think we'll get there.
Scheduled to graduate.
2020.
Wonderful. And you mentioned that you have a fundraiser that you're organizing. What exactly is that?
That'll be amongst the WNL students. It'll be a tournament style with teams buying in for, we haven't decided the style of tournament, but like teams will buy in for $100 and then hopefully get as many teams as possible.
Mayor, it might have something to do with beer pong if you'd like.
Fair enough. Fair enough. My son graduated in 2021, so yes.
I'm just saying.
Exactly. I appreciate your candor, without a doubt. And if you're not aware, David Ziegler is also a alum baseball player. So teed that one up for you with those questions.
Nick said he was the best pitcher they've ever had. So
wow.
Put that in the minutes, please.
Yeah.
That's
Fair
what Nick
enough.
said.
Yeah. Stick doesn't lie. He talks a lot, but he doesn't lie.
And he still throws BP.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. We're blessed with a lot of good people that come through Lexington, and we greatly appreciate your effort and endeavors here as a student, and more importantly, with this effort. So thank you for embracing that. Unless there's an objection, I'd like to take a roll call vote. Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Betts?
Aye.
Ms. Strawn?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you all very much. Good luck and best wishes. And saw a few
much.
people writing down May 28th as a
May
dedication.
28th At the city of Chesapeake's at the city park. So the city had donated to us about a quarter acre. As Jim had mentioned, one of the things like the city did down there, I was able to help them get the concrete because I have a good friend of mine that's in the concrete business, but then the city volunteered their services to build out the pad for us. So, that helped us save probably $5,000-$10,000, which was awesome. So, it's barter and trade and try to figure it out as much as you can, so, but yeah, it's great. But yeah, so right at the city park, 1 o'clock on Sunday, May 28th.
Terrific.
We'll all be there.
Great. Thank you for enduring our entire meeting, being the new business here, and best of luck to you. Dave, nice to meet you.
It's the most important person.
See how that arm is now.
Thank you.
I'm not aware of any other new business, and we have no closed session. Is there any other topics or discussion or things for the good of the cause? Hearing none, we will stand adjourned. Again, thank you all very much. Remind council we will reconvene 7 o'clock on the 27th, a week from at City Hall. City Hall. We are adjourned at 8:28.
Good night.